They say that every flame begins as a whisper, a breath drawn between fear and defiance. And in the sugar lands of Bahia, that whisper had a name. Her name was Ana Felipa. But history, as it often does, tried to erase it, replacing her with silence, with shadows, with the word mukama, as if servitude could describe a soul that refused to kneel. Before I tell you her story, take a breath with me. In and out. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the air thick with the smell of salt and burning cane. The sky the color of bruised copper. The year was 1883, just 5 years before Brazil would declare slavery over, at least on paper. But in the Reconcavo region, freedom was still a rumor, and mercy an illusion. The plantation of São Geronimo stretched for miles, a kingdom of sugar and screams. It was said that the sun rose for the masters and set for the enslaved. And between those hours, the world turned red. Red with soil, red with sweat, red with blood. Ana Felipa worked inside the house, to the outside world that made her fortunate. She wore linen instead of rags, served at tables where glass reflected candlelight instead of moonlight. But inside, she carried the same chains as everyone else, only quieter, hidden beneath obedience and bowed eyes. Because in São Geronimo, silence was survival. The mistress of the house, Dona Isadora, was a woman of lace and loneliness. Her husband, the colonel, ruled the plantation with a whip and a prayer. He feared only two things, fire and God, and Ana, though he never noticed it, feared neither. Each night, when the house slept, she whispered old songs her mother taught her, songs forbidden by the church, songs that carried the rhythm of lands across the ocean. In those moments, she was not a servant. She was a memory, a spark that refused to die. But one morning, everything changed. The overseer brought news. 20 slaves were to be transferred to another plantation in the interior, a word that meant disappearance. Those who were taken never returned. The rumor was that the new master paid for workers with broken bodies because he preferred those who no longer resisted. Among those chosen was a boy, 10 years old, small, quick to laugh. He belonged to no one and everyone. Ana had helped deliver him years before, cutting his umbilical cord with her own hands. He called her Tia. When the overseer read his name aloud, she felt something in her chest break, a sound that didn't belong to her body, but as something older, heavier. And that was the moment the whisper became a spark. That night, while the wind rattled the shutters of the big house, Ana went to quarters. The air was damp, heavy with fear. Men and women sat in silence, not daring to speak of the morning that awaited them. She looked at them, faces carved by generations of pain, and she said only one thing. Tomorrow, no one leaves this place. At first, they thought it was madness. A woman against the plantation, a servant against the empire, but her eyes held a stillness that made others listen. She spoke softly, like someone reciting a prayer. There's no God in their churches, she said, only gold and sugar. If salvation is real, it will come from fire. By dawn, the overseer came with chains and soldiers. But what he found was not submission. It was silence too deep, too deliberate. The kind that breathes just before a storm. In the kitchen, Ana moved as if nothing had changed. She stirred the morning coffee, her hands steady. But beneath the table, hidden from sight, was a small clay pot filled with oil, the kind used for lamps and funerals. When the bell rang for mass, she carried the tray to the chapel. The colonel sat in the front row, his gold crucifix glinting in the morning light. He did not notice that Anna's gaze lingered on the altar candles, how their flames swayed, hungry, alive. When the priest lifted his hands to bless the bread, Ana whispered under her breath, not amen, but remember. And outside in the fields, smoke began to rise. Breathe, feel the heat, hear the chains rattle in the wind. This was not rebellion for glory. It was grief sharpened into justice. The slaves broke their locks with tools stolen from mill. The overseer shouted orders, but the horses panicked, the soldiers stumbled. The air turned black. In the chaos, Ana walked the flames as if she were part of them. Her white apron turned red, her skin glowing with the reflection of everything she refused to bow to. She reached the boy first, untied him, and one by one, freed the others. Some ran for the forest. Some froze, unable to believe it was real. And in the distance, the great chimney of São Geronimo cracked like a scream. The mill was dying when the fire finally consumed the house. Those who escaped said they saw her standing at the top of the stairs, torch in hand, her eyes fixed on the sky, not in anger, but in peace. And though the records later claimed all perished in the fire, the stories that survived said otherwise. They said 20 souls reached the coast that night, that they crossed the mangroves barefoot, guided by a woman whose dress still smoked from the fire. They said she vanished by dawn, leaving only ashes and footprints that led into the sea. That's where her trail ends, but not her story. Because every year, when the sugarcane burns before harvest, locals say they can hear her voice in the crackle of the fire, soft, almost like a lullaby. And sometimes in the smoke, they swear they see her face, not of a slave, but of a savior. By the time the smoke cleared, the world of São Geronimo was gone. The mill that once sang with the rhythm of gears and chains now lay silent, a blackened skeleton against the dawn. Only the wind moved through it, carrying the smell of burned sugar and bone. The Empire called an accident. The colonel's widow, still trembling, swore before the authorities that it was divine punishment. The priests called it blasphemy. But among the people, the ones who worked the docks, the washerwomen by the river, the fishermen who saw the red glow over the horizon that night, they called it justice. And justice, they said, had a woman's hands. In the weeks that followed, the governor sent soldiers to restore order, but what they found was fear. Villages whispered about Ana Felipa, the firewoman, the spirit of the cane. Some said she was alive, hiding in the forests. Others swore she had become something else. Not flesh, not ghost, but flame itself, a vengeance that could not be touched. The soldiers dug through the ashes for proof. They found chains fused to stone, nails melted like wax, and bones charred but unbroken. One set of bones, smaller than the rest, was found beside what had once been the chapel door. They said it was the boy's, and beside it, the imprint of a woman's hand, pressed into the earth as if reaching for him even after the fire. That image spread through the Reconcavo like smoke. A mother's hand, a child's bones, and a house of masters turned to ash. The powerful called it rebellion. The people called it remembrance. Let's stop for a moment. Imagine the silence after such destruction, the kind that hangs heavy in the air, as if even the birds are afraid to sing. Imagine the soldiers walking through that ruin, boots sinking into mud and ash, their rifles gleaming with dew and fear. One of them, a young officer from Pernambuco, wrote in his diary that when he entered the ruins, he felt the heat still rising from the ground, as if the fire had not yet finished breathing. He wrote, "It was as though the land itself had devoured the master and kept the servant alive." That line never made it into official reports. It was buried like Anna's name. But memory has a way of surviving bureaucracy. It hides in the spaces between what's written and what's felt. When the court convened in Salvador months later, the case of São Geronimo was presented as an example, a warning. The documents called it a tragic revolt led by a deranged female servant. The word revolt was dangerous. It implied intention. So they changed it to incident, then later to act of God. That's how history rewrites its guilt, by changing verbs. The widow of the colonel arrived dressed in black lace, her veil thick enough to hide the bruises on her pride. She spoke of loyalty, of devotion, of betrayal. She wept before the governor and said she was like family. The same lie told across centuries by those who loved their servants until the moment they stopped serving. And when the priest was asked what could drive a woman to such madness, he said, "The devil travels easiest through grief." He meant it as condemnation, but perhaps he was right. Grief can turn holy things to fire. Back in the Reconcavo, people began lighting candles by the ruins, not in mourning, but in gratitude. They called it the Night of the Burning Cross, not because of religion, but because the wooden cross that once stood over the chapel had been found blackened yet unbroken. its arms pointing not upward, but toward the earth, as if even God had decided to look down for once. Every year after, on that same night in October, women gathered near the site with clay lamps. They sang quietly, their voices weaving through the night like smoke. No one led them. No one dared stop them. Even soldiers avoided the place, whispering that the land was cursed. But if you asked the old women by the river, they'd tell you something else. They'd say the curse wasn't on the land. It was on those who built their homes with blood. There's something haunting about how memory chooses its guardians. Historians write dates and names, but the truth survives in rhythm, in songs, in stories told by firelight. It's passed not through books, but through whispers. Ana Felipa's name was forbidden in church, so the people called her Aquila que Quaimuo Sol, she who burned the sun, because after that night, they said the dawn over São Geronimo never looked the same. The sky turned red before the first light, as if the world itself remembered. Let's breathe again. Can you feel the weight of that? A single woman enslaved, unarmed, choosing to destroy the symbol of her oppression. She didn't wait for freedom to be granted. She took it, and in doing so, she forced an empire to look at itself, if only for a second, before turning away again. But fire leaves marks that even denial can't erase. The land remembers, and so do those who carry its stories. Some say that years later, when abolition finally came in 1888, descendants of the freed from São Geronimo returned to the ruins. They planted sugarcane again, not to sell, but to burn. Each harvest, they'd light the field at dusk, watching the flames climb the stalks like veins of memory. And as they watched, they'd whisper, "This is for her." We talk about history as if it's dead, but it isn't. It breathes through us, in our silences, our choices, our fears, and sometimes it burns through us, reminding us that even the smallest flame can consume a kingdom. Years passed, empires shifted, the law changed, but the soil of Bahia, that red, stubborn earth, still remembered the night when one woman turned grief into fire. By 1888, when freedom was finally written into law, the ruins of São Geronimo had already been swallowed by vines and silence. No plaque, no record, no prayer. Only stories, carried by fishermen, told in whispers between mothers and daughters, as if saying her name aloud might still draw the attention of those who once owned the world. But history is a strange beast. It forgets loudly and remembers quietly. And in those quiet spaces, Ana Felipa lived on, in the port towns of Sano Amaro and Cachoeira. People began telling new versions of the story. In one, she survived the fire and escaped to the coast, where she helped others flee through the mangroves under the cover of night. In another, she was caught, but when the soldiers tied her to the gallows, the rope turned to ash in their hands. And in the oldest version, the one whispered by the oldest women, she never died at all. They said she became part of the land. That every time a field burned before harvest, she walked among the flames, making sure no one was forgotten. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter, because myths are not lies. They're truths that refuse to die the way facts do. One evening, decades after the empire fell, a man named João Batista, a schoolteacher from Salvador, visited the ruins. He wrote in his diary that he had gone there to teach the past, but left being taught by it instead. He described the way the light hit the black stones at sunset, how the air shimmered like heat though there was no fire, and how, for a moment, he thought he heard footsteps behind him, soft, barefoot, deliberate. He turned, but there was no one there, only the sound of wind through the tall grass. He wrote one final line that still survives. Some stories walk with you, even when you leave them behind. And maybe that's what Ana Felipa became, a story that walks beside those who still dare to remember. And imagine standing in that place today, the ruins gone, replaced by sugar fields again. The same soil that drank tears now feeds profit. Different masters, same sweetness. But if you close your eyes, you can still feel it. The echo of chains beneath the surface. The heartbeat of those who refuse to kneel. The hum of history under the hum of machines. That's what they don't tell you about freedom. It's not a moment, it's maintenance, it's memory, it's choosing again and again not to forget what burned. Let's talk about her one last time. A woman who could not read, but rewrote history. A servant who carried fire in her hands instead of prayer. A mother who looked at the empire and said, "No more." There are no portraits of Ana Felipa, no marble statues, no hymns, but there are traces in the way people light candles by the sea, in the way they whisper before lighting torches during the Festa de Imania, in the way the air seems to glow just before rain. That glow, that's her legacy, not destruction. Transformation, not rage. Remembrance. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if she hadn't done it, if she had stayed silent, obedient, waiting for mercy that never came. Maybe 20 souls would have vanished that day, their names lost to the same sugar fields that swallowed millions before them. But instead, one woman's fire reached across centuries. And here we are, telling her story in another language, in another time, so far from Bahia. And yet, somehow, right there with her, because storytelling is resurrection. Every time her name is spoken, the chains shake again. Every time someone listens, the mill burns again, not in vengeance, but in truth. And that's the difference. Vengeance ends. Truth endures. If you ever travel through the Reconcavo, ask the locals about the night the sky turned red. They might smile, or they might go quiet. And if they take you to a field still black beneath the green, don't step carelessly. The ground there holds stories. And if you listen long enough, you might hear her voice too, not screaming, not crying, just whispering as the fire crackles and the wind shifts. No one leaves this place enslaved again. And maybe that's all history really is. A cycle of forgetting and remembering, burning and rebuilding. We inherit ashes and choose what to do with them. Some build monuments, others light candles. But the brave, the ones who refuse silence, they build fire. So tonight, when you see flame, even the smallest one, remember what it once meant to someone like her. Remember that freedom was never a gift. It was always stolen, taken by hands that shook, by hearts that broke, by women like Ana Felipa, who carried the fire so we could carry the light. Some stories end in ashes. Hers still burns,